You
Okay,
should
but you know
memorize
what's
that.
interesting? Okay, hang on. You know what's interesting, Anna? Yeah, you're having
Yes,
the
go ahead.
complete reverse. You're having the complete reverse.
No, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not.
okay, I'm going
I'm
to
not.
explain. We haven't
The
heard
New
my-
York Times just published a piece on
You
this
haven't
that I
heard
hope
my
you
question
read.
yet.
That I hope you read.
You haven't
Go
heard
ahead.
my question yet.
Right. You care about the deaths in Palestine, but
No,
you don't
no,
care about
not
the
that, but
Iranian
not
people.
that.
I do care about the
You
Iranian people.
In today's video, Anna Kasparian fact-checks Piers Morgan on Piers Morgan Uncensored. This one gets heated fast. Piers Morgan goes head-to-head with Anna Kasparian over the Iran war, US, foreign policy, and what's actually happening behind all the headlines. And honestly, this is where things get interesting, because instead of just picking sides, Anna starts digging into the bigger picture, the lack of a clear endgame, the real impact on civilians, and how a lot of these decisions don't seem as strategic as they're being sold. But before we dive into today's video, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.
The goalposts have changed so often. You know, it was early on, this was going to be regime change. And they thought by decapitating the top of the regime, killing the Ayatollah and a lot of the top people, then naturally, and apparently this was what the Israelis told the Americans, there will be uprisings and the regime will topple. None of that has happened. So they've now moved, it seems to me, to a different game plan, which is actually what we meant all along, was degrading their military and stopping them building a nuke. They've done the first, that has to be accepted. They've massively degraded the Iranian military, but they've come nowhere near to stopping them developing a nuclear weapon if Iran chooses to, because the uranium is still there.
Unfortunately, you have two different countries that are involved in this effort to, I guess, either topple the regime in Iran, which isn't going to happen, or, degrade Iran's military capabilities and ability to build nuclear weapons. For the Israelis, it was never, ever about nuclear weapons. It was never about degrading Iran's military capabilities. It was always about regime change for them. But in order to build consent or manufacture consent among the American people for a war that we all knew was going to be a disaster, the American people were fed lies and all sorts of fear-mongering about how Iran is such a threat that we need to get involved and we need to disarm the Iranians. Okay, how is that working out for us? There was no strategic military plan in place. Elika is on the propaganda wing, and she's like, oh, I don't know, it's not my job to think about the military strategy. No, Elika, it is your job to think about military strategy, because you're advocating for something that's going to get American soldiers killed. It's going to get innocent civilians killed. In fact, that's happening right now as we speak. And so you should ask yourself, is there really a reliable path here, a militaristic path that's going to secure what I personally want, which is regime change? And honestly, there isn't a path.
What's your path?
There isn't a path. What? First of all, I don't have a path because I've analyzed the situation and realized that Iran has a formidable military and that we're going to put our soldiers in jeopardy by taking them over there. I didn't interrupt you, and you're interrupting me. Why are you interrupting me? Piers, are you going to intervene? Because she's interrupting me when I didn't interrupt her.
Yes, I think that's a fair comment. You shouldn't interrupt each other because we can't hear either of you when you do. So
I appreciate it. It is important to ask yourself, as you're advocating for military action, whether or not that military action is going to secure the gains that you're advocating for. And if you looked at the landscape, if you looked at the terrain in Iran, if you looked at what Iran is capable of doing, the fact that they control the Strait of Hormuz, you would think about all these elements before spouting off about getting the United States involved in a war that isn't going to secure what you think it's going to secure. There isn't going to be regime change in Iran. And by the way, I think it's disgusting that we are dragged into a war on behalf of a foreign country that does not plan to put any of their boots on the ground. Not a single IDF soldier is planning to be on the ground.
That's a really interesting point.
If you zoom out for a second, history is pretty clear on this. The US has already tried the whole regime change plus a military pressure formula in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and those wars didn't just drag on for years. They cost trillions of dollars and thousands of lives without delivering the clean political outcomes that were promised at the start. That's not speculation anymore. That's documented reality. And when people talk about just degrading military capabilities, it sounds simple until you look at how modern warfare actually works. Iran isn't some isolated country. It's deeply embedded in regional networks with influence across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and beyond. Even the US Department of Defense has acknowledged in past reports that Iran relies heavily on asymmetric warfare, meaning missiles, proxies, and economic choke points. So even if you hit military targets, you're not really eliminating their ability to respond. Then there's the economic side that people keep underestimating. Around 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Every time tensions spike there, global markets react almost instantly. Fuel prices go up, shipping costs rise, and that trickles down into everyday things like food and transportation. So even if someone is thousands of miles away from the conflict, they're still paying for it. And probably the biggest issue here is the lack of a clear endgame. Even experts in international relations will tell you that military action without a defined political objective usually turns into mission creep. You start with one goal, then it shifts, then shifts again. And before you know it, you're stuck in something much bigger than what was originally sold to the public.
The noise from the left, I have to say, was pretty. I'm not accusing you or Anna. I don't know what you both said about it at the time. You can enlighten me.
Said nothing.
But there was a deafening.
Oh, I'll tell you what I said.
Oh, hang on. There was a.
Don't speak for me. Don't put words in my mouth.
You said it. No, I actually remember very well.
Sorry, I'm actually talking.
You don't know what I had to say about it.
30,000 people were killed. I heard it from your mouth.
Okay.
There's no evidence that 30,000 people were killed. Show me the evidence.
There it is. There it is.
How many do you think were killed?
Where is the evidence, Elika? Where's the evidence?
You want me to tell you?
What's the source?
You want me to tell you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can tell you the source. I can tell you the source because how quickly you believe in terrorist regime, but you don't believe.
Just give me the source. I don't need to.
I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you right now. Silence, and I'm going to tell you. Every single hospital in every single city in Iran gave a tally of how many corpses were in their beds. In total, that amounted to 36,500 people, and that didn't include the people that were
source? What source compiled those numbers?
The hospitals.
Every hospital? Okay, so you yourself talked to every single hospital?
I saw the list. I saw the list of every hospital with every number.
You saw the list.
Google it.
Who published the list? Who published the list?
It's everywhere. Human rights organizations.
You should know the source. You should memorize that. If you're so heated about
I'm
this
telling
issue.
you.
But you know what's interesting? Okay, hang on. You know what's interesting, Anna? Yeah, you're having the complete reverse. You're having the complete reverse.
No, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not.
Okay, I'm going to explain. We haven't heard
the New York Times just published a piece on this that I hope you read.
Yet.
That I hope you read.
You haven't heard my question yet.
Right. You care about the deaths in Palestine, but you don't care about the Iranian people. I do care about the Iranian people. Unfortunately,
you got utterly enraged when people questioned the number of people who'd been killed in Gaza, rightly, because it turned out those numbers were broadly accurate, have now been admitted by Israel. And yet here you are doing exactly what so many Israeli guests did on this show about the deaths in Gaza. You're just refusing to believe any of the numbers coming out of things. So my question for you would be, well, if it wasn't 30,000, then how many do you think were killed?
I don't know. I don't know exactly.
So how do you know it wasn't 30,000?
Hold on.
Hang on.
Elika,
sorry,
let me make
again,
my point.
Anna,
if you're going to ask a question, let me answer it. Let me answer the question.
This. Anna,
I know, but let me answer the question.
My point being, the very question that I used to ask all the Israeli guests who would try and cast aspersions is the same question I put to you. It's the same question to you, which is, if you don't know, how do you know it wasn't 30,000?
Okay, let me explain it, okay?
You don't know.
No, Piers, let me explain it. Okay, when it comes to Gaza, the Gaza Health Ministry, historically, you look at the history, they have historically been accurate and very careful when they publish death tolls, okay? They're always confirmed. In fact, oftentimes, they're an underestimate. So I know to trust the Gaza Health Ministry because of its history of publishing accurate data.
Now, when you're talking about war, you can't just throw out big numbers or claims without solid verification. That's not just a political preference. That's standard practice across journalism journalism, intelligence, and even groups like the United Nations. They typically rely on multiple independent sources, satellite imagery, NGO reports, and on-the-ground verification before treating casualty figures as credible. There's a reason for that. In conflicts, misinformation spreads fast, sometimes intentionally. During the Iraq War, for example, intelligence claims about weapons of mass destruction were accepted publicly before being fully verified, and that ended up shaping a war that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. So now there's way more skepticism, especially when numbers can't be independently confirmed. And when it comes to Iran specifically, access is heavily restricted. Independent journalists and watchdog groups don't have the same level of access they might have in other conflicts, which makes verification even harder. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch usually take months, sometimes years, to compile reliable casualty data from places like that. So when huge figures appear instantly without clear sourcing, it's reasonable to question them. That doesn't mean people don't care about victims, it actually means the opposite. If anything, being careful about the numbers is part of taking those lives seriously, because once misinformation gets mixed in, it becomes easier for governments or media to push narratives that justify more escalation. And that's the bigger point here. When the conversation jumps straight to outrage without clarity, it often ends up fueling support for more conflict, not less. History shows that wars rarely start with fully agreed facts. They start with assumptions, pressure, and narratives that sound convincing in the moment, but don't always hold up later.
In the case of Iran, we know a few things. We know because so many American former government officials and current government officials and the Israeli media were literally bragging about putting Mossad on the ground, arming people. And that's why so many of the law enforcement or police officers, security forces in Iran were also killed. Okay, there's a lot of disinformation coming out, and there are different sources publishing different information about the death toll, which is why I don't know. I have not found a source that I fully trust
and yet you
that's
are
giving me accurate data.
No, but Anna, again, I would use the same questioning I did to people about Gaza.
How many of them were killed by Mossad operatives? How many of them were actually killed by the
I'm not asking you that.
No.
I'm simply saying once you've admitted you have no idea how many were killed, I find it extraordinary that you would be so emphatic in refuting the 30,000 number. You don't know.
You think 30,000 people were slaughtered in 1 week?
I think it could easily have happened from the scenes that I was looking at. Yes.
I don't
Okay, you don't believe it. Okay, but
I don't believe it.
Given that you've admitted you don't know, you don't know. Let me come back to Elika. You know, I have noticed there has been I think there has been a double standard here from people on the left who I respect, where they seem to care an awful lot more about Palestinians being killed in Gaza, which I also shared their care about, and the protesters killed in Tehran at the start of the year. And it was deafening. It was deafening. And Hollywood was deafening by its silence too. And I just think that's another thing that is just wrong about this. It's intellectually dishonest to people, right? To pick and choose which innocent people.
You know what's dishonest, Piers? The fact that
that
Iranians are getting killed right now. Civilians are getting targeted right now. This war began, with 175 people getting slaughtered at an elementary school? Elika, you got anything to say about that? Do your people feel liberated?
Yeah, I do, actually.
You don't live in Iran? You've never lived in Iran. And you have the audacity to talk about this as if it's the liberation of the Iranian people as they're getting killed, as their hospitals are being bombed, as healthcare workers are being killed.
Now, the real issue underneath it is actually about standards, what counts as credible evidence, and how careful we should be before jumping to conclusions in the middle of a war. And that's where Anna Kasparian has a stronger footing, because in conflicts like this, uncertainty isn't a weakness, it's reality. Even agencies like the United Nations often take weeks or months to verify casualty numbers, especially in places where access is restricted like Iran. There's a reason for that. Early reports in war zones are notoriously unreliable. We've seen this play out over and over. During the Iraq War, early claims about threats and capabilities were treated as fact before being fully verified, and that ended up shaping a war with massive long-term consequences. More recently, in conflicts like Syria, different groups reported wildly different casualty numbers depending on who controlled the narrative. That's why analysts now rely on cross-verification, satellite data, hospital records, NGO reports, not just a single claim floating around online. Another thing people gloss over is how modern warfare actually works. It's not just missiles and airstrikes anymore. It's also information warfare. Governments and intelligence agencies, including groups like Mossad, have openly acknowledged in past operations that psychological and informational tactics are part of the strategy. That means conflicting narratives aren't accidental, they're expected. And when it comes to the idea of liberation through force, history hasn't exactly been encouraging. In places like Libya after 2011, removing a regime didn't lead to stability. It created a power vacuum and years of ongoing conflict. Same story with Iraq. So when people talk about war as a clean solution, the track record just doesn't back that up.